Football, football, football. The English Premier League is underway, and names famous the world over will once again be competing in one of the most popular sporting stories in modern entertainment. You know the names of the clubs, but how much do you know about what they really mean? Join our resident word detective Charlie Taylor as we discover the history behind the grounds and the football clubs of the English Premier League.
Arsenal. Not connected with arse, as you might think, but with the word arsenal, which is a place where you keep weapons. A much fuller etymology of that can be found in Interesting Etymologies number 18 on the Bulldogz channel. Arsenal is the only London club that has a tube station named after it. Originally they were Woolwich Arsenal, and they moved up to Highbury, where they never should have got rid of the marvellous Art Deco frontage, but they did, and now they play in the Emirates. But there is one team that plays in a red shirt with white sleeves at Highbury. Who's that? Answer at the end. Aston Villa. Yes, there was a Villa once in Aston. Aston Villa have played at Villa Park since 1897. It's a pretty impressive thing, and when there was all standing, the Holt end was capable of making quite a racket. Also, it was chosen for lots of semi-finals for the FA Cup. 55 in total were played at Villa Park until they moved them all to Wembley in order to pay for the ill-thought-out refurbishment. They won't say that though. Brentford. Yes, a forward over the River Brent. Brentford have just moved into the soulless sounding Brentford Community Stadium. Griffin Park was the old place. It was famous among all football supporters in England because it had a pub on every corner. Brighton. Boer Films Farmstead in Old English. Brighton and Hove Albion, they play at the Goldstone Ground, at least between 1902 and 1997. Then they set off on some wanderings. They had to go to Gillingham, then they came to Withdean Stadium, and currently they play at Farmer Stadium. Burnley, meadow by the River Brun. Burnley's home is Turf Moor and has been since 1883. 3 years later, it rather incredibly, and I say that because I've been there, became the first football ground to be visited by a member of the royal family, and it was none other than Prince Albert Victor, who saw Burnley play Bolton Wanderers in a friendly. The Bob Lord stand was put up by their flamboyant chairman during the 70s, but apart from that it's a bit of a dump. My own memory as an away fan was walking into the rather dilapidated away end and seeing the cheerful graffiti on the wall there. Enjoy this match, it will be your last. Chelsea, a place where you land to unload chalk. Chelsea's magnificent East Stand was a forerunner in the world of architecture and forward thinking, but it nearly ruined us. I mean, Chelsea. Yes, we got relegated on the back of that. There wasn't any money for ages. Chelsea pitch owners still own the pitch to this day because we used to have to take a bucket around and chuck coins in. Chelsea's famous home end was known as the Shed, and still exists, though it's all seater these days. Crystal Palace. Yes, it was once a Crystal Palace. Well, sort of. It was part of the complex of the exhibition centre. Crystal Palace used to play inside the Crystal Palace, not the actual palace, but the exhibition grounds. But they bought some land in the early 1920s and contracted the famous architect Archibald Leach to build Selhurst Park. Everton. The name Everton is connected with the Old English word aver, meaning a wild boar. Now, the new stadium is planned to be in use by 2024, and it's right down on the dockside, which is a bit of a pity because that, amongst other buildings, was the reason why the United Nations refused to grant it continued heritage status. It said that the recent developments are, and I quote, detrimental to the site's authenticity and integrity. Oh dear. The story of the wrangles over the old stadium, Anfield, we'll look at when we get to Liverpool. Leeds, Loidis, was simply an old name for the district, which got narrowed down to mean that particular town when they got around to building it. Leeds United play at Elland Road on a plot of land which was bought from Bentley's Brewery and is named after the pub that sat across from it, originally known as the Old Peacock Ground. I remember it as a child as being a pretty imposing place up there on those bleak moors. Leicester City. The town of Leicester has had many names over the years. The Chester or Chester or Caister ending denotes a Roman settlement. It was Legorensis Civitatis at one time, don't you know? Leicester City's home from 1884, when they were Leicester Foss, to 111 years later was Filbert Street. Consequently, they were known as the Filberts. They moved to the King Power Stadium in 2002, and I haven't really got a lot to say about that. Liverpool. Well, yes, the pool is a pool, but what's a liver, or is it a lava? Liverpool's famous stadium, Anfield, was the home of Everton until they split and moved across Stanley Park, a very short distance away, to form a separate football team. John Holding was the hero stroke villain here, depending which side you're on. If you talk to a Liverpool supporter, they'll tell you they've chucked him out because he wouldn't pay his rent. If you talk to an Everton supporter, they'll tell you he was a dirty capitalist who was trying to exploit Everton's success, and they got rid of him. Investigate more on that to see who's right and who's wrong. But remember, when dealing with Liverpudlians, these are the people who, when asked what they consider England's second greatest city to be, reply London. Now you'd think that Everton or Liverpool would have the ground which is closest to the River Mersey in the English Football League structure, but they don't. Who does? Another answer at the end. Manchester City. Manchester, best guess, is from a word meaning a hill in the shape of a breast. Manchester City's old home ground, Main Road, was almost modern by the standards of that time. It was built in 1923 and over 58,000 fans saw the first game there. They'd moved there from Hyde because of a fire, and a lot of people didn't really like the fact that it was so far out of the city centre. Anyway, they don't play there now, they play at the Etihad, which is what everybody calls it, though it's really called the City of Manchester Stadium. Manchester United. Yes, it still means a hill in the shape of a breast. Manchester United's ground is very famous and is called Old Trafford, also known, according to many sources, as the Theatre of Dreams. Yeah, not to non-United fans, I wouldn't say. Anyway, that opened in February 1910, and one of the incidents in the tragic side of Manchester United's history was that Old Trafford was bombed during the war in 1941. Newcastle United. Now, Newcastle. Newcastle play at a ground that was put over an old district which contained St James's Place, St James's Street, St James's Terrace and Lees's Terrace. So it was kind of natural they called it St James's Park, and the Leeses became part of the ground, as did the Gallagate End, which was another of these ferocious homestands that was capable of making a lot of noise. Norwich City. That's North Wick. Wick meaning field or farm. Norwich play at Carrow Road. And the only thing I can tell you about that is that I once went to watch a game and they wouldn't let me in with a newspaper because they said I might use it to start a fire. It's also famous for a half-time rant by their local supporter and celebrity chef Delia Smith, who took a microphone onto the pitch at half-time and happy with one of their performances. She wasn't happy with the crowd either.
Where are you?
She told them so.
Where are you? Let's be having you! Come on!
Southampton. South settlement on the bend of a river. That one means. Southampton have been playing in the new St Mary's Stadium since 2001. Before that, they had a lovely little ground nestled at the bottom of a dell, it seemed, and consequently called the Dell. That was their home from 1898 until the move in 2001. Tottenham Hotspur. Well, as far as the region goes, this is the place where a certain Tota had a ham, which would be his farm or his enclosure. For the rest of the etymology, you know where to go. Tottenham decided to get rid of the old ground, White Hart Lane, and rebuild on the same site, and have made quite an impressive stadium, though it pains everybody to say it. The famous Tottenham End, so to speak, was known as the Shelf. The new ground is called the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, though I'm sure we'll all think of a different name for it. Watford. It's another forward, and this one's a wet one, not a dry one, a wet forward. Watford play at Vicarage Road, which will be 100 next year. That's about it for Watford. I tried to find something interesting about the stadium, but I couldn't, so in desperation I looked up, what is Watford famous for? And I got Watford Coliseum, which is where the soundtracks of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings were recorded. Ah well, there you go. West Ham United. Well, we know this one by now, don't we? It's a ham, a place where people live, and it's in the west of somewhere, though it's in the east of London. West Ham play at the City of London Stadium. Very controversial move at the time. After the 2012 Olympics, they hoisted them into this mega stadium, wondering whether they'd fill it or not. It was a jinx for quite a while, but they seem to have got over that. Previously, they played not at the West Ham Stadium, which is for greyhounds, but at Upton Park, which was actually called the Boleyn Ground, but nobody ever called it that. Boleyn as in Anne Boleyn, that is, and also as in the pub name Bull and Gate. Yes, that was originally the Boleyn Gate. Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolfrun's high or principal enclosure. Wolves have been playing at a popular stadium among fans because it's one that's managed to retain its old character and yet sustains modern football. They've been playing at the strangely named Molineux since 1889. And here are the answers to the questions. Who plays in red with white sleeves at Highbury? It's Fleetwood Town, of course. That Highbury being the 112th biggest football ground in England. And which football stadium is closest to the River Mersey? It's Stockport County.